everyone, welcome to our podcast. I'm Jess.
I'm Rizal. Hello.
And today's topic is about using our voice. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about our own fear of speaking up and how that's impacted our lives and also what we're currently doing to approach it. So Rizal, maybe you can start us off by sharing what kind of like situations or experiences tend to trigger your fear of speaking up.
I think there are really two situations which trigger this whole fear of speaking up. Number one, it's when I'm in a new environment. I'm naturally an introvert, so it's a bit hard for me to really voice out my opinions or thoughts when I'm with a group of new people, right? There's this part of me which wants to fit in. So I try to force myself to say something. But there's also this part of me who, which is trying to discover the group, right? I don't really know what their likes and thoughts and anything about the whole situation is. So I'm trying to really analyze and figure out my situation. So because of that, I tend to just clam up and just not say anything.
Objection! That's kind of opposite from how I know you, to be honest. Because in the first outing that we had, when I first met you, it was 8 of us, I think, at a dinner table, and out of everybody there, you were the one who spoke the most.
You see, that's what I was going to bring up as well. Right? The second situation, however, is like exact same thing, new environment, but I have been in situations where it's just been complete awkward silence for everyone on the table, right? And I personally feel really awkward and shy when that happens. So it's almost like I have to speak. If I don't speak, then no one will say anything.
So you're like on performance mode and then you're just going and going and going, right? Because you had a lot of stories, bro, like a lot. And it was very personal stories. And I was like, wow, this guy really talks. It was helpful.
But I think that's one of my defense mechanisms, right? Which I'm trying to learn is actually not that great of a thing. But that defense mechanism is that if it's an awkward situation where no one is sharing, I tend to just share everything about myself. So by doing that, I accomplish two things. One is I feel the whole dead silence. But two is that there's nothing surprising about me, right? Like they can find out anything about me, but it won't be surprising anymore. So they cannot use it as a weapon against me. That's a sort of a defense mechanism I have.
It's like when everybody knows everything about you, then so
exactly.
Like there's nothing, you can't hurt me, I suppose. Okay, that's interesting. I think for me, it's more when it's a one-way interaction, when I'm not getting immediate feedback from my audience that I feel the most nervous.
Like in this podcast.
I'm terrified right now. I'm feeling very, very uncomfortable, which is actually why I'm doing it. But when it's a one-way interaction, I mean, I know you're here. And
I exist.
You exist. You're real. That's great. But we're assuming there are people listening, but I can't see them. So what happens is there would be judgmental voices in my head telling me like, oh, no one's actually going to listen to this. It's going to be a waste of our time. We're just recording this, but it's like syok sendiri, like we're just entertaining ourselves. And I also feel like I look funny on camera. So I feel very uncomfortable. Whereas when I'm doing a presentation in front of an audience, there are actual people in front of me. They're like physical, tangible beings. So it's a little easier for me to focus on that as opposed to now when there's like an imaginary audience, hello. Then I tend to get a little bit more in my own head, I think. How
has this affected you in your personal and your professional life then?
I feel like when I don't speak up, because there are moments when I really want to speak up, but I don't, right? I feel really small, like I'm letting myself down. It's almost as if there's this really big personality in me that wants to come out and be shown. And it's like, let me out, let the people see me. And I'm like, stay quiet, hide in there. So it kind of makes me feel sad. And at the risk of it being cliche, it kind of makes me feel like I'm not living into my full potential. I'm not living my best life because there's always something that's hidden in me. That's like on a personal side. On a professional side, I feel like I do force myself to speak up more in a professional setting because I'm paid for it. I have to do it, right? Like if I'm uncomfortable, I still have to do it. So I just force myself. And what I found is that the more I speak up, the more comfortable I would get, and also the more I'm able to contribute. Because I remember when I first started, I would feel like everybody else knows more than me. So I'm just gonna sit and listen. You know, and then I might get ideas in my head as the conversation is going on, but I don't say anything. I like filter myself, or I wait for the perfect moment to step in, and that moment never comes. So I'm just like sitting there in anticipation and high anxiety, and then like 20 minutes later, somebody says the exact same thing. Everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, that's a great idea," and I'll be like, "I should have said it earlier. The discussion would have moved faster, you know." And then I feel so silly, and I feel like, why am I even here if I'm not contributing?
Professionally, that also is a disservice to your team, right? You just said like you wasted 20 minutes of your time because you came to that conclusion faster than anyone else did. But then 20 minutes later, they're like, "Oh my gosh, this is a revelation."
I know, like. What about you, though? How does it go for you?
I mean, I do have some personal stories, I guess, about this. So I'll need to give a little bit of context here. So in the past, when I was around 14, 15 years old, I had this outbound a year experience.
Are taking you to the great outdoors.
Where essentially we were just living in the mountains for the whole year. We still had to go to school and everything, but to get electricity, to get hot water, to do all those things, we would have to like chop up firewood, we'd have to do all those things. And because we were living at the base of the mountain, something which was regular was that we would go on hikes. And every time we go on hikes, we'd be put into a group, right? And sometimes it's your friends, sometimes it's acquaintances, and sometimes it's a mix of the two. So I got put into this group where it's a mix of the two, right? It's like I had some friends in there, so I didn't feel completely uncomfortable, but I also had some acquaintances there who I knew, but we had never really spoken before, right? And just to put things into further context, I was quite a chubby and a fat kid.
Yeah, we're just swimming in context now.
Yeah, swim in the context, right? Because it all makes sense in a bit. I was not confident in my athletic abilities or my sporting abilities. So as we were hiking, we got to this point where the teacher said, "Oh, wow, you guys are doing really good. You're like the second place right now for all the hike teams." And we were like, "Yeah, we're celebrating." We're thinking, "Yes, okay, let's go. Let's keep on going. We want to be the first ones." And then we got to a fork in the path. It was either we go straight, and by going straight, we would have followed the path, or we turn right, where it kind of looked like it was a gully, and to those who don't know what a gully is, it's basically a dip down the mountain. But that was a decision we had to make. It didn't look exactly like a path, but that was a decision, right? And the leader of the hike group essentially said, "Guys, I think it's to the right. I think we should take this path down the gully." And I looked at it thinking, I don't think that's the way to go. I mean, if the internal me was thinking, we're hiking upwards, right? Why would we go down so far to go back up? But I understand hiking, sometimes you have to go down and up, right? But
just like life.
Yeah, just like life. But this is way too far down. So I wanted to say something, but at the same time, I was just like, oh, maybe he knows better, right? He seems pretty fit, he seems pretty intelligent. All right, fine. I won't say anything, let's just go down there. We walked and we walked and we walked. And then we realized that we were completely off the track. We were completely lost. And we had stayed lost for 13 hours. Can you imagine? Because it started raining, it started pouring, and we couldn't actually find a way back. So we couldn't even backtrack to where we were. We had to keep on going there. And long story short is that at the end of the day, after getting lost for 13 hours, right? And imagine these are like 4 or 5 14-year-old kids who didn't really know what they were doing in life, don't know, lost in some mountain somewhere, panicking. But after 13 hours, the teachers finally found us because they found the fork in the path, and they were like, "Okay, we'll bring you to the campsite." And they asked like, "Why didn't you go this way instead?" And then I said I actually wanted them to go. And then they asked me this question: "Why didn't you speak up?" And I just couldn't answer. I just thought, what the heck? Why didn't I speak up?
Yeah.
I could it ended well because we
Yeah.
were safe,
Yeah.
but it could have ended really, really badly.
That's true.
So I mean, that's a personal experience of mine about the whole pain of not speaking
Yeah.
up, right? And actual real life consequences from it. Yeah.
Crazy. So like now that you've been through all that, how do you tell yourself to speak up in the moment, or like how do you overcome your fear?
That's a good question, actually. I think that essentially it's just this. Essentially, there's two ways I can think of speaking up. Number one is to do it gradually, right? And I think this works for those who are more introverted, more shy. It's a simple method, but it's something which you can employ like straight away, even like tomorrow, for example. In a workplace, in a work setting, just get your voice heard. Whatever it is, you can say, if someone says an idea and you're quietly sitting in the corner, just say something like, I agree with that point, or I think that's a good idea. Once you say that, once you're more comfortable with saying that, you're, at the very least, that is the first step, right? Your voice is being heard. And then following that, you can slowly add on and say, oh, I think that was a good idea, and I think this would make it better. Then you input your own point there, right? And then once you build up that confidence slowly and slowly, you can get to the point where you can say, oh, I disagree with what you're thinking because of XYZ, and I think this is a better idea.
Right. So you're like giving yourself steps.
Yeah.
Instead of thinking like you have to immediately jump to the very top and then just give up from being terrified.
I think that is a more gradual approach, and I think that actually is something which resonates and is easier for people to translate into real life. Because the second advice I was going to give is just to do the plunge, right? To just say whatever you want to say. And to be honest, that's the approach I did. Because after that whole experience, I just decided, nah, I'm never gonna be in that situation again where I need to. But not everyone will have a life experience like that, right? Not everyone will be pushed to the edge. But if you have been pushed to the edge, then you'll know that you might have to take the plunge. So this is my advice to the people who needs to take the plunge, right? This is the second step. This is the ones where you just say whatever comes to mind. Anything, any thought you have, just blurt it out.
Bloody Mary! Like that.
Like that. Verbal diarrhea, everything. Doesn't really matter what anyone says, because at the end of the day, even if your thoughts are messy, at least you're speaking out.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, that then takes practice, right?
Yeah.
Even this whole verbal diarrhea takes practice, because the more you talk, the more you realize even you get lost in your own thoughts.
Yeah.
So you have to keep refining it so that it's more concise and that it's easier for people to understand what you're saying. And a method that I've done, and I don't know if anyone has noticed this in this whole time, is by numbering, right? Firstly, secondly, thirdly, finally, whatever it is, so that at the very least, there's structure in your thoughts. So I mean, that's how I've overcome my own fear of speaking up. But I would really love to hear for you. And I don't know, I feel like I'm the only one who's sharing personal anecdotes now. Is there anything like that's happened to you personally?
I feel like there are too many. Like, I've always associated myself, I've seen myself as a shy person who doesn't speak up, and there are so many incidents I can think about where I wish I had spoken up. It could be as simple as like when I was in kindergarten, I was really afraid of speaking at all, but I was part of a caroling group. I went to a convent kindergarten, and there was a nun who was our teacher, and she took us caroling every Christmas. And I remember when we were practicing, just before we went to the houses, she told us, you can't ask for permission to go to the toilet.
Nope, you can't.
You can't.
Typical
it's rude.
Asians.
It's rude, so don't ask that. And for whatever reason, I never questioned that. I just thought, okay, she's the teacher, she knows best, I have to listen to her. So we went to like 7 or 8 houses that evening, and every house that we went to, we would get a box of drink. And because we were singing all the time, we get really thirsty and just down the entire box, right? I'm talking about like a 6-year-old with a bladder that's God knows what size, just gulping down these boxes of drinks. And by the end of the evening, I really, really had to go. Actually, like halfway through the evening, I knew that I had to go already, but I was still holding it in, and I made it to the end. Guess where it failed? On the way home, my bladder decided like, I've had enough. This is it. I've hung in there for you, but this is as far as I go. And so
I can imagine what's gonna
yeah,
happen.
there was a
No.
mess in the van. Is all I'm saying.
No.
Yeah. And we were like sitting in close quarters. So
No.
everybody had a feel of it. And that's what you get for telling a kid to not go to the toilet when she needs to.
Wait, so everyone got their
Well, maybe
clothes
just
wet?
like the people sitting next to me. Only like 2 or 3 people. That's fine. It happens. You look horrified. It's really not so bad when you're a kid, I think.
Is it really not bad?
I don't know, but anyway, there was a point to that story. I think it's like, even in something so simple as that, where it is just asking for permission to do something that I biologically need to do, I didn't speak up, and there were very obvious consequences due to that. And it didn't end at kindergarten. Like, there was another time in college, and I come from Sarawak, a part in Malaysia that has some highlands, which produces very special rice. It's called barrio.
Oh, barrio rice.
You know barrio rice?
I like barrio rice.
It's super special, super
it's
expensive, very rare, very difficult to get. And at that time, I was dating someone from West Malaysia. So when I was visiting his family, I brought barrio rice from Sarawak, packed it in my luggage, took it on a flight, premium rice, brought it to his house. They cooked it for dinner that night, and we had some people come over.
Okay.
And then his mom said like, oh yeah, Jess brought this rice from Sarawak. And then the guest just said, oh okay, yeah, rice is cheap in Sarawak. And that's all they said.
God.
And like, I was like,
that's so
rude.
rude.
I spent like so much money on this rice because back then I was poor. I was a poor student, right? But I like splurged on the rice. And the dumb thing is they didn't know because I didn't tell them it was special rice. And it doesn't make sense to me now why I wouldn't have just said something about where the rice came from. It would have made me feel a little better, and I'm sure they would have appreciated the rice more as well. I think in my mind, I just felt like, oh, that's what they believe, so I don't want to like show off about my rice.
Oh, but that sucks though, because it actually was like special rice that you had. It's not even like, first of all, it's damn rude for them to say that it's cheap in Sarawak.
Assuming that it's cheap.
First of all, that's completely off the table. That's so rude. They should just, any gift that you get, you should just humbly accept it, right? You're like, okay, thank you for the rice, even if you don't know what it is. But secondly, for it to be such high quality rice.
I know, what a waste. So only you get the good rice now.
Yes.
So
yeah, I mean, thanks for the personal anecdotes. Now I feel like I know you a bit better. I feel like they know you a bit better. But
you heard this before?
Yeah, I have.
Both the stories?
Both the stories.
Oh, wow, my gosh. We've known each other for too long.
Yeah.
Okay.
So maybe my reactions aren't as fresh as it should be, but...
Thank you for acting fresh.
No, but it jogged my memory. I did kind of forget about it a little bit.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, so, I mean, how did you get to this point now, though? Because now I know that you are a director. You in TFM at your workplace.
I've resigned, so I'm jobless soon.
Well, okay, fine. But you got to the level where you were essentially the senior leadership team, where you had to speak up a lot more, right?
Yeah.
You have to be in positions where, like what you said earlier, you have to speak in front of live audiences. I know that you've spoken on BFM, you've spoken on Astro Awani. You've done a lot of things. Yeah, but it's still very, very different from this kid who couldn't ask.
I know, to go to the toilet.
To suddenly speaking on national television, national radio.
I've grown.
Yeah.
I've grown.
So, yeah, how did you get to that point?
I think first of all, let's borrow your numbering technique. First of all, it's really about getting clear about the purpose for speaking. Like understanding your own motivation for wanting to speak up and aligning to that and visualizing why it's important, why it matters, right? That's why I used to speak up more in work situations than personal life anyway, because for work, I was very clear about the why, the purpose of me speaking up. And once I was clear, regardless of how uncomfortable it is, I knew I had to do it. So it was just riding through the discomfort. So number one. Second thing is probably to then just say yes to any opportunities that you have.
Right.
Recognizing that it might still be uncomfortable, but if you don't practice, you're never going to get better at it. It's just one of those things. So you mentioned I was on BFM and Astro. Those
Yeah.
were last minute invitations. Like they would tell me at say 4 o'clock and then say the interview's like in an hour or something. And I think it was good and
Damn.
bad because it was last minute. I didn't have that much time to sit in anxiety. It was just like, okay, let's just do it. Say yes and then get it over with. And then later feel like, okay, there were things definitely I could have done better about it, but I'm glad I said yes because now it's less scary. So
Yeah.
say yes to opportunities. And then the third thing is to prepare. If you have the chance to prepare, then prepare. Like get to know what your key points are going to be so that you feel a little less nervous. I know lots of people can probably speak off the cuff. Or maybe not
Yeah.
lots of people. There are people who can speak off the cuff. I can't do that for very serious topics, especially those that I'm not used to. I would
Right.
tend to ramble a bit more, so I think it's better if I prepare ahead of time and then think about how I'm going to present it.
Yeah.
And then the fourth thing is to practice and get feedback.
Okay.
So just to be honest, this is our second time recording this.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, we're very new to podcasting and we have no idea how to do it. And even today's recording, I'm sure like we'll look at it and think there are ways to do better.
Yeah.
But already I feel like it's smoother than when we tried yesterday.
Yeah, definitely a lot
Yeah.
a better flow, a lot better. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think practice and get feedback, even if it was feedback to each other.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the final thing when you're doing it, I think this really helps, is to just focus on the listener. Like most of the time, people are thinking about themselves. We're thinking about ourselves
Yeah.
as well, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
not to obsess too much about, oh, how am I looking? I feel like my face is lopsided. I really do think so. But who cares? Like, focus on the listener and think about how you can add value to them, your listeners. And then, yeah, the nerves will just go down a little bit, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good message. And I think that listing it down for them really helped to break it down. Thank you for using
Just
the numbering
following
technique.
your advice.
But yeah, I mean, if you have time, I really like that that you shared with them that this is actually our second time doing it.
Yeah.
Because with that whole idea of practice and feedback, I know we
Yeah.
have each other to
Yeah.
give each other feedback,
Yeah.
right? But something that you can do if you're preparing for like an interview or a a presentation or something is that you can actually like everyone has phones nowadays, right? You can actually take a phone and record yourself speaking, like through all those practice questions, through the presentation, to whatever it is, and you can give yourself feedback. You can say, okay, I think I did this well. I think I did this
Yeah.
well. I think this could be improved, and this could be improved. Then, by doing that, you will improve, not just naturally.
Yeah, definitely. And like for me, doing this podcast is a way of getting over my fear of speaking up. Like no one is forcing me to do it aside from Rizal.
Hey,
But
I
you're not
don't
really,
force.
yeah, you're not really forcing me, you know,
This
like,
one.
it's not work, I'm not accountable to anybody, I'm not getting paid for this, so it's so easy to just say like, I'm too lazy to do it, I'm not gonna do it, but I wanna do it anyway because I don't wanna live with fear. Like, I wanna be brave and feel like I'm someone who can speak up, I wanna change that identity I have of myself, so that's why I'm doing this, and I'm glad that you're
Yeah.
listening. If you're there, thank you for
Thank
listening.
you.
Arigato.
Arigato. And yeah, I think that basically wraps up our first episode ever. Yay!
We did it.
Thank you so much for watching, and we hope that you got something away from this.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Peace out.
Peace out.
Bye.